Kim Jong-Un has just declared total war on Vladimir Putin. Not a war of words, not a symbolic gesture, but a full-scale mobilization of North Korea's armed forces against the man he once called his closest ally. The reason? A death toll so catastrophic it shattered even Kim's iron grip over his nation. 50,000 North Korean troops slaughtered in Ukraine, sent to fight in a war they neither understood nor were prepared for. For months, rumors swirled through Pyongyang of mass casualties, missing soldiers, and devastated families receiving only silence from the regime. Now, with his military humiliated, his political image shattered, and his patience exhausted, Kim has unleashed a declaration unlike anything the modern world has seen. North Korea is going to war, and their first target is not the United States or South Korea, but the man who turned them into cannon fodder, Vladimir Putin. August 30th, 2025, Pyongyang. The world watches as Kim stands atop a podium draped in black, his voice shaking with barely restrained fury. Flanked by his top generals, he announces a campaign of vengeance against the Russian Federation, accusing Putin of orchestrating the systematic extermination of North Korean troops in Ukraine while using Kim as a political puppet. Behind him, massive banners display rows of coffins wrapped in North Korean flags. For a nation used to propaganda displays, this one feels different. It isn't triumphalist, it's grim. The carefully cultivated aura of Kim's invincibility has been replaced with something far more dangerous: desperation and rage. What you're witnessing right now is not just geopolitics. It's the unraveling of one of the world's most brutal alliances, a partnership forged in desperation, now collapsing in blood and betrayal. Kim Jong-un's decision to send 50,000 of his elite troops to aid Russia's war effort in Ukraine was supposed to cement his status as a major player on the world stage. Instead, it has become the greatest military disaster in North Korean history, a humiliation so severe that it threatens the very stability of his regime. Let's rewind to see how this betrayal was engineered and why Kim is now preparing for a war that could set the entire world ablaze. Next head. Late 2024, North Korea was at a crossroads. Decades of crushing sanctions, food shortages, and isolation had left Kim desperate for any opportunity to secure international leverage. Enter Vladimir Putin. Reeling from staggering Russian casualties and equipment losses in Ukraine, Putin saw in Kim not just an ally, but an expendable resource. A leader isolated enough, desperate enough, and arrogant enough to gamble his own military strength for promises of technological advancement and international recognition. This deal seems simple. North Korea would supply troops and weapons to Russia in exchange for cutting-edge missile technology, food aid, and political support. In reality, Putin was setting a trap. Russian commanders deployed North Korean troops to the most dangerous fronts in Ukraine, sending them into entrenched Ukrainian defenses where casualty rates soared. Reports from Ukrainian military sources describe North Korean forces thrown into battle with little preparation, outdated equipment, and no understanding of modern warfare. These weren't joint operations. They were mass executions disguised as military strategy. Within months, casualty numbers spiraled. By early 2025, 20,000 North Korean troops were confirmed dead or missing. By mid-summer, that number had ballooned to 50,000, representing some of Kim's best trained forces, soldiers he had spent years cultivating for a potential showdown with South Korea or the United States. Instead, they were slaughtered in a foreign war that never was theirs to fight. Next head. What makes this betrayal so shocking isn't just the scale of the losses, but the psychological warfare Putin waged against Kim. Intelligence sources reveal that Russia deliberately concealed casualty numbers from Pyongyang, while dangling promises of advanced weapon systems on the way. Grain shipments arrived in small, carefully timed deliveries, keeping Kim dependent and unable to pull back his forces without appearing weak. Russian state media praised North Korea's, quote, heroic contributions, portraying the alliance as unshakable, even as Kim's forces were being decimated. The strategy worked for months, but eventually the truth leaked. Satellite images of mass burial sites, families in North Korea quietly asking questions about missing sons and husbands, defectors smuggling out reports of entire battalions wiped out overnight. The illusion of partnership crumbled. By August 2025, Kim was facing internal unrest unlike anything seen in his regime. His elite military units, once the pride of the Korean People's Army, had been gutted. His generals, furious over the needless losses, began pressuring him to retaliate. For a dictator obsessed with projecting strength, this humiliation was intolerable. And so, on August 30th, the supreme leader of North Korea stepped before the cameras, his voice filled with venom, and declared total war against the man he once called Comrade Putin.
Kim's speech was a masterclass in propaganda and fury. He accused Putin of sacrificing Korean blood to preserve Russian pride, labeling Russia's actions as an unforgivable act of treachery. He vowed to turn Moscow's skies black with fire and to unleash the full wrath of the Korean people on Russia's military forces. For a moment, even seasoned analysts were stunned. North Korea had spent decades framing the United States and South Korea as its primary enemies. Now, for the first time, Pyongyang was openly threatening Russia, a supposed ally, and promising a campaign of vengeance unprecedented in the nation's history. Hours after the declaration, satellite imagery showed massive troop mobilizations across North Korea. Military bases buzzed with activity as artillery units were repositioned, missile platforms moved, and armored divisions rolled toward coastal regions. Sources within South Korea's intelligence community reported that Kim ordered a wartime economy, diverting all resources toward a full-scale military response against Russia. It's a staggering escalation, and one that could plunge the world into chaos. But to understand just how dangerous this situation is, we need to examine the man behind it. Kim Jong-Un is not a leader who forgives betrayal. His entire regime is built on fear, loyalty, and absolute control. For decades, he has ruthlessly executed rivals, purged generals, and eliminated anyone who posed a threat to his power. Now, that same rage is directed outward. Putin, once seen as an ally, is now his mortal enemy, and Kim is prepared to burn everything in his path to exact revenge. Russian intelligence analysts are reportedly scrambling to assess the threat. While North Korea's military is outdated compared to Russia's, its sheer scale and unconventional warfare tactics pose a serious challenge. With over 1 million active personnel, tens of thousands of artillery pieces, and an arsenal of nuclear weapons, North Korea is not a country to be underestimated. And Kim knows this. He's betting that Russia, already stretched thin in Ukraine, won't be able to handle a new front of conflict. This is a gamble of historical proportions, and one that could reshape the global balance of power. Meanwhile, Ukraine has seized on the chaos. Kyiv's forces are intensifying their offensives, exploiting the cracks in Russia's alliances. Western nations, while wary of North Korea's unpredictable leadership, quietly welcome the rift between Moscow and Pyongyang. U.S. intelligence officials believe this could mark a turning point in the war, weakening Russia's ability to sustain its offensive operations. But this isn't just about Ukraine anymore. This is about the collapse of an alliance that once threatened to destabilize the entire Pacific region. For years, Kim and Putin had presented a united front against Western influence. Now, that partnership has disintegrated, replaced by open hostility. And as Kim rallies his nation for war, the world is holding its breath. Pyongyang's streets are filled with soldiers marching in perfect formation, their faces expressionless, but their movements sharp and deliberate. State television broadcasts footage of Kim touring missile facilities, inspecting rocket launchers, and shaking hands with commanders who vow loyalty until death. Propaganda posters depict Russia as a backstabbing enemy, while massive rallies in Pyongyang show tens of thousands of citizens chanting "Death to traitors." For a country long isolated from the global stage, North Korea is suddenly at the center of the world's attention. And Kim is reveling in it. But there's more at play here than vengeance. Kim's declaration of war is also a calculated move to consolidate power at home. By redirecting public anger toward an external enemy, he hopes to silence dissent and reassert his dominance over a shaken military. Yet, this strategy carries immense risks. North Korea's economy is already on the brink of collapse, its infrastructure strained, and its resources limited. A direct confrontation with Russia could push the nation to the edge of survival. And that's exactly what makes this moment so dangerous. Kim is cornered, humiliated, and furious. A combination that has historically led dictators to take extreme world-altering actions. Intelligence agencies across Asia and Europe are on high alert. South Korea has raised its military readiness level. Japan is conducting emergency security meetings, and the United States has deployed additional reconnaissance assets to monitor the escalating situation. The fear is not just a conventional war, but a potential nuclear confrontation, as Kim has repeatedly threatened to use all means necessary to defend his nation's honor. In Moscow, Putin remains silent. Russian state media has downplayed Kim's declaration, portraying it as empty rhetoric and insisting that the Russia-North Korea alliance remains strong. But behind the scenes, Kremlin insiders are reportedly furious. Putin's gamble has backfired spectacularly. What was supposed to be a cheap source of manpower for his war has instead created a new enemy armed with nuclear weapons. And Kim is not bluffing. Military analysts warn that North Korea could launch cyber attacks, missile strikes, or covert operations against Russian assets. Pyongyang's cyber warfare units, among the most sophisticated in the world, are likely already preparing to target Russian infrastructure. Meanwhile, satellite images show that North Korea is massing missile batteries along its northern borders, a clear signal to Moscow that Kim is ready to escalate. The world hasn't seen this level of tension between two authoritarian powers in decades, and this time, the stakes are higher than ever. Kim Jong-Un is a man on a mission. He has nothing to lose, and that makes him one of the most dangerous players on the planet right now. Putin underestimated him, used him, and discarded him. Now, the dictator who once feared being forgotten on the global stage has found his chance to reclaim relevance, and he's seizing it with both hands, even if it means dragging the world into chaos.
Across North Korea, the mobilization is unprecedented. Factories are operating 24/7, producing ammunition, uniforms, and military supplies. Civilians are being conscripted into auxiliary units, while propaganda campaigns flood the airwaves, declaring this war a sacred act of justice for the fallen. Entire cities are transformed into training hubs, with children as young as 12 seen in state broadcasts practicing evacuation drills, donning gas masks, and pledging loyalty to Kim. It's a scene reminiscent of the Cold War's darkest days, but this time the threat is not hypothetical. Kim is preparing for an actual war against one of the most powerful nations on Earth, and he's doing it with a sense of determination that alarms even his closest allies. China, North Korea's traditional benefactor, has remained noticeably quiet. While Beijing has historically supported Pyongyang, analysts believe China is reluctant to get involved in a direct confrontation between two of its strategic partners. For now, China is watching closely, weighing whether to intervene diplomatically or allow the conflict to escalate. But even Beijing's silence speaks volumes. The alliance structure that once defined East Asia is cracking under the weight of betrayal, ambition, and bloodshed. Inside Russia, panic is spreading through the military ranks. Soldiers stationed near the border with North Korea have been placed on high alert, and the Kremlin has reportedly redeployed key assets from the Ukrainian front to strengthen defenses in the Far East. This move could have massive consequences for the war in Europe, as Russia is already struggling to hold its lines against a resurgent Ukrainian offensive. If Putin diverts too many resources to counter North Korea's threats, it could tip the balance of the war. Western nations are watching with both fascination and dread. The United States has increased reconnaissance flights over the Korean Peninsula and Russia's Far East, while NATO leaders hold emergency meetings to discuss potential responses. Publicly, Washington has condemned North Korea's aggressive stance, but privately, U.S. officials see this as a strategic opportunity. A direct conflict between Russia and North Korea would weaken both regimes, potentially reshaping the geopolitical map for years to come. But there's also a dangerous unpredictability in play. Both Kim and Putin are authoritarian leaders known for their willingness to take extreme measures. Any